It's the holiday season and things are getting busy. You might be looking for some nutritious, flavorful meals to fuel you on jam-packed days when you've got too many things to do. Factor, America's #1 ready-to-eat meal delivery service, can help you eat well for breakfast, lunch, and dinner with chef-prepared, dietitian-approved, ready-to-eat meals delivered straight to your door. You'll save time and stay on track with your healthy lifestyle while tackling all your holiday to-dos. Cross meal prepping off your list this holiday season with Factor. Skip the meal planning, grocery shopping, chopping, prepping, and cleaning up, and get Factor's fresh, never frozen meals delivered straight to your door. They're ready in just 2 minutes, so all you have to do is heat and enjoy. My wife and I have tried Factor meals, and they're probably the best ready-to-eat meals we've ever tried. They're really easy to use. Just take them out of the refrigerator, heat them up in the microwave, and peel off the top, and you're ready to go. Treat yourself to high-quality, delicious meals over the holidays. Choose from over 35 chef-crafted meals every week that support a healthy lifestyle and meet your meal preferences, whether it's calorie smart, vegan and veggie, protein plus, and more wholesome options. Looking for calorie-conscious options over the holidays when everybody's trying to load you up with lots of treats that don't skimp on flavor? Try delicious dietitian-approved calorie-smart meals with around less than 550 calories per serving. Or if you need an extra boost to support your wellness goals and help you feel your best during the holidays, try Protein Plus meals with 30 grams of protein or more per serving. Factor isn't just for dinner. Count on extra convenience any time of day with an assortment of more than 55 add-ons to suit various preferences and tastes. Choose from quick breakfast items, lunch-to-go, grab-and-go snacks, and ready-to-drink cold-pressed juices, shakes, and smoothies. With Factor, you can rest assured you're making a sustainable choice. We offset 100% of our delivery emissions and source 100% renewable electricity for production sites and offices. This December, get Factor and enjoy eating well without the hassle. Simply choose your meals and enjoy fresh, flavor-packed meals delivered to your door. Ready in just 2 minutes. No prep, no mess. Head to factormeals.com/wheelbearings50 and use code wheelbearings50. That's wheelbearings50 to get 50% off. That's code wheelbearings50 at factormeals.com/wheelbearings50 to get 50% off. Coming up on episode 330 of Wheel Bearings, Nicole's back, Robbie's back. We got the Volvo C40 Recharge, the Honda Accord Hybrid, the Alfa Romeo Tonale plug-in hybrid, snow tires versus snow socks, more problems with the Blazer EV. Tesla's recall is not quite fixing what it's supposed to. They're also having problems making batteries for the Cybertruck. Bird goes belly up. Hyperloop One is also done. All that and more coming up next. This is episode 330 of Wheel Bearings. I'm Sam Abuel-Salmon from Guidehouse Insights.
And I'm Nicole Wakem from the Road Reflective podcast.
Yay! Welcome back.
I'm back.
Yay, Nicole's back. And I am Roberto Baldwin from SAE International.
We're all here.
Good to have you back too, Robbie.
We got the band back together. It's like who got back together in the 80s.
Yeah, except, well, I mean, most of the band got together.
Most of them.
You know, they did have a drummer that blew himself up or something like that.
That happens, unfortunately.
Speaking of which, did you know that they're doing a Spinal Tap 2?
Yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah.
It's such a goofy movie. It's like everything about it feels like you shouldn't like. It feels like, oh, this is gonna be dumb. This feels dumb, and then you watch it, you're like,
It's brilliant.
And you laugh anyway. Yeah.
You laugh anyway, and if you're a fan of music, you laugh. If you're in a band, then you're like, oh my gosh. And then apparently touring like big bands, they're like, oh my god, there's too many things that are real. It's like
Yeah.
Like everyone, like they make all these political shows, and then most political people are like, most politics is like Veep.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is accurate.
This is the most accurate of all the things. Just
Sadly.
And given that the Rolling Stones are still touring, and Keith Richards turned 80 last week.
He's 80. How do you tour at 80?
He works out all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, he looks super.
I can. It makes perfect sense, to do a sequel to Spinal Tap, with Michael McKean and Christopher Guest and Harry Shearer, because they're pretty close to that age, if not above that age. So
Eddie Vedder turns 59.
Oh my gosh.
wow.
So there you go, Gen X. We're all. I understand
Robbie.
my aging. I understand how old I am, but it's hard for me to figure out. I'm like, oh my god, I went and saw the
other
Breeders, and they're in their
people your
60s.
age- Yeah, the other people your age are not allowed
Like musicians,
to age with you.
musicians aren't allowed to age. Like I am allowed to age, but musicians of my generation aren't allowed to age. And when
Not.
I go and see them, and I'm like, oh my god, we should go and get like an early bird dinner later.
Yeah. I mean, the first big concert I went to was seeing the Kinks in 1980 at Maple Leaf Gardens in Toronto with
Kinks.
In Excess
Wow.
opening up.
Oh my god, that's a great show.
When they right after they had released their very first album.
My very first concert was U2, The Unforgettable Fire.
What? That's another great concert. I think mine was like Stevie B. He was this R&B singer in like the 80s or 90s. And I only saw him because I was an FFA, and we lived Tehachapi, in Bakersfield was the Kern County Fair, and they needed a skeleton crew, which were kids who just stayed at the fair all week and slept in like trailers. And I was one of the skeleton crew. And at the fair, that's who the band was that was playing, was Stevie B.
Wow.
I'm the guy who's been a bunch of punk bands, but my first concert was Stevie B.
That's funny.
All right. Nicole,
Yeah.
what have you been driving?
Okay, well, I only just got this car, and there's a little story. There's a little story. I think I shared part of the story with Sam. I have the car again today, Sam.
Oh, it's back?
It's back. So
Wait,
I
what?
have, Robbie, I didn't share it with you. I just didn't share it with you, Robbie.
Oh, I'm excited.
Yeah, so super exciting. So I have a car that I actually really, really like. I have the 2023 Honda Accord Hybrid, which I took on a road trip back in the summer to.
No, when you went to Accord, New York or somewhere?
It's not Accord, New York. It's Accord, New York.
Okay. But it's spelled like Accord.
You can call it Accord, though.
Pronunciation's important. It's like literally the thing. It's like Accord, not Accord. Although they're really excited about the Honda Accord.
Well, it's kind of like the French named streets in Detroit. DeQuinder and
Exactly. These things that we know how we're supposed to say it, we're not going to say it that way.
Yeah.
So I had done a road trip in this, and I actually really enjoyed it. I had it was a long, hours behind the wheel of this, and they give it to me again right now, which is always great to just have it at home for a little bit. And I had the 2023 Honda Accord Hybrid Sport for 3 days, and it was fantabulous. And then I walked out to it, and it wouldn't start. And it was showing me every electronic error that one could possibly conceive of, which I learned because I didn't know that the battery alone can make it kick all these crazy errors because all those systems don't have enough juice.
The 12-volt battery or the hybrid battery?
No, the regular, not the hybrid battery.
The 12-volt, it's a low voltage battery. Yeah.
Yes. So it was caught. So I had all these errors and just jump started. I'm like, yeah, let's have this checked. I don't want to be driving a dead car somewhere. So I actually had it towed to a car dealership that was all of it's like practically walking distance from my house. And that was on Friday night before the holidays. So they checked it this morning and they said, yeah, hey, so you needed a new battery. So we put a new battery in your car and it was covered under warranty. And I'm like, that's great because I'm not paying for it anyway. So they got it all taken care of. Did a couple of recalls on it while it was out there. There were some outstanding recall things to check that they checked.
Nice. So giving you a car is like a one-way ticket to maintenance.
Apparently. And
this car needs a lot of work done. Give it to Nicole.
I know, what the heck? And then while I had it, it just was, because we have 2-week loans, it was due for its 10,000 mile maintenance. So I had a maintenance light on. They did that while I was there. I'm like, hey, I got it back and it's working perfectly. So I had it back today. I was kind of excited to have it because I really do like this car. And I was like, man, I was looking forward to having this for a couple weeks. So my little Honda Accord Hybrid Sport had a little hiccup, but now it's fine. It's back to happy Honda days. So all is right.
Happy Honda days.
Happy Honda days have returned. So I feel like I have to report that there was an issue, but very easily rectified issue. So this car, the one I have, it is $33,445. Gentlemen, destination.
$9.99.
Sam?
I'm gonna go with $1.
You should.
I think it's $9.95, but
no, it's actually $10.95.
oh,
Yeah. So Robbie, you win.
Yay! I'm a winner.
You're a winner.
Happy Honda days, everybody.
Happy Honda days, everybody. I'm just going to say that 100 times during this episode.
everybody gets a Honda Accord Hybrid under their seat.
Exactly.
Happy Honda days.
Everybody
VTEC is the reason for the season.
We're just an ad for Honda right now. That's all we are.
That's fine.
So I drove this a long time, had it for a little bit this week, and then had it back again today. And I really enjoy driving this. I mean, I think this is a good car. 33,000 for 445. I want to say the Sport is not. It's not base trim, so you can get this cheaper than this if you want. There is a just straight up gas engine available in the Accord, but I think it's just like the base trims, like the base couple of trims that you can get it. So it's like Honda's pushing towards having more hybrid than they are gas. They were really hoping they would skew more and more hybrid with this, so they have more trims available as a hybrid.
When I talked to one of the Honda people at the LA Auto Show,
yeah,
he was telling me that I think on the Accord and the CRV now, they're at about 50% penetration of hybrids. So about half of Accord and CRV sales are hybrids now.
So, and that was at the LA. So yeah, so that tracks with what they were trying to accomplish with this one. So, and it gets now, I haven't had it long enough to really get fuel economy on it because I had it and they reset everything and now I don't know. But it was
secret
in the last 5 minutes. No. But the EPA ratings are really good. It's 46 city, 41 highway, 44 combined. That's decent fuel economy for a
That's nice.
Yeah, and the Accord is not a tiny sedan. It's not gigantic, but it easily, I mean, you could sit 3 adults in the back. 3 would be a little snug shoulder room wise, but 2 easily. And even with, I pushed the seats pretty far back just to kind of see, and still I could sit behind the front seat even when it was pushed pretty much all the way back. So unless you had 2 Robbies, one in front of the other, you're going to be okay.
Double Robbies.
Double Robbies. As long as you have
it's one short
person and one normal sized person.
A group of Robbies is known as a nightmare.
A nightmare. As long as you don't have a nightmare, you're okay. So I enjoy driving this. I think it's a nice, comfortable drive. It has plenty of power. It has no trouble getting up to highway speeds. What do we have inside of here? We have a 2-liter 4-cylinder with a CVT. The CVT is nice. It's not a loud CVT. It does a good job at delivering power. You never feel like you're getting on the highway and suddenly, whoever's behind you is going to be right up on your rear end. And it's just a nice, comfortable car. I like the seats in this too. And I thought that when I got back into it today. So the thing is, that meant that over the couple of holidays we had here, because we're recording this on Tuesday, so it's right after Christmas that we're recording this, because they had it over the holiday, I drove my own car. You know what's really funny? If you've been driving really brand new cars all the time and then you have to take your 2010 Dodge Charger everywhere for the holiday, you're suddenly keenly aware of how much more comfortable modern cars are than your 2010 Dodge Charger. Well, it wasn't even, and it's not an insult on my Charger. I love my little Charger, but it's like, man, I got into this one like, this is so much more comfortable. Like, it's such a comfy car. It is really a great vehicle and so quiet and so smooth. So in terms of like sedans, if you're going to be doing a lot of driving, this is a great little sedan. I like this. Like, I would buy it. And here's the funniest part. I can tell the story because it was hilarious. So the guy that I ended up calling AAA to come haul the car over to the dealership. And the guy's like, oh, I have an older Accord. I'm like, you do? He's like, yeah, I love the Accord. This is like a 2013 or something. He's like, oh, and it's been great. And it's got like 195,000 miles on it. I mean, it is not a low mileage car. He doesn't really have any problems with it. It's been great, but he sits down.
Yeah, but that's just breaking in the engine on a car.
It's just breaking it in, right? That's what he said. He's like, I'll have it until when he sat down, he's like, okay, so come here. And I'm like thinking he's found something horrible when he sat down. He's like, and there's a picture on the instrument cluster of the taillights of the rear end of the Honda Accord. It shows there. And when you put your turn signal on, it blinks a little turn signal on the picture. And when you hit the brakes, it hits the little brakes on the picture. He's like, that's really clever. He's like, now I want to know, here's your engineering question. If my light goes out, does my light not work on the picture?
I believe that is the case.
It is the case. Okay, because I couldn't answer that question.
Next time I have one, I will have to unplug one of the light
pull
bulbs.
Pull a light. And I was so funny. I'm like, well, just
get Russ to do it tomorrow for you.
I said, just bash a tail light. They'll never know. Honda will never notice. He's like, okay. He also loved the wheels on this because it has really dark, like it's a black finish. I should look and see. I don't know that it says.
Do you have the Sport L or the Sport Hybrid?
I had the hybrid sport, so it's not the Sport L, but it had these really nice, it's sort of like almost kind of like a matte black kind of wheels that it has. So the wheels look fantastic, which I agree with him, but I showed him because he doesn't like the wheels that are on his. And I said, the problem when you have these really pretty matte black wheels is if you curb clip even the tiniest bit, someone has done it.
Very noticeable.
You don't, it's not like a scratch. It's like, It doesn't matter. It could be the lightest scratch in the planet and everyone's going to see it. So if you get the really pretty wheels, just don't hit the curb.
Just never hit the curb. Never drive.
He was looking at the wheels. He was like a little thing. He's like, this is way more comfortable. And again, his is a 13. This is great. He's like, I kind of think I might need to upgrade now. So Honda may have sold a Honda Accord Sport Hybrid because this one had a bad battery. But he thought it was really cool. So it was kind of fun to see someone else's reaction to the car and to be chatting with his tow truck driver. And it was just, I think the thing that strikes me is it's just comfortable. And you want to sit in to be comfortable. And you're not buying it like this, the hybrid. Of course, you want that good fuel economy. You're not buying it to win races. You're not buying it to be showy. You're not buying it because you want to impress anyone. You're buying it because you want a reliable, smooth, comfortable, efficient car. And it checks all of those boxes. So I really
got places to be. That's why you're buying
places to be, and you want to you don't want to have to worry about it, except for that one time in Nicole's driveway breaking down. And so high marks for the Accord Hybrid. I really enjoyed this. I was excited when I found out I was going to have this for the long 2-week Christmas loan because this is a car that I genuinely like. And the Accord is one of our finalists. Is it one of our finalists?
It is one of the finalists for NACTOY.
Yeah.
Yes,
it's our finalist, which we will be announcing January 4th.
Dun, dun, dun.
For the cars, it's the Accord, the Ioniq 6, Hyundai Ioniq 6, and
is it?
Where's the third one?
Oh, geez, Louise, that's terrible. I should know. So
the Mustang.
Was it the Mustang?
Yeah.
No. Was it? Oh my God, I didn't think it was a Mustang.
I'm part of another thing, so I don't know what you're talking about.
Nicole's on all the juries. Robbie and I are just on one each.
It's just a morph of all the juries all as one. Wait a minute. What was our finalist? It was now, and I know they just changed one because we.
Oh no, sorry, it's the Prius.
Yes,
Prius
there
Prime.
we go. I'm like, it's not Mustang, Prius.
Yeah.
So those were our finalists. So
Mustang was a semi-finalist. So so the finalists for North American Car of the Year are the Honda Accord, Hyundai Ioniq 6, and the Toyota Prius and Prius Prime. For Truck of the Year, it's the Chevy Colorado, the Chevy Silverado EV, and the Ford Super Duty. And then for Utility Vehicle of the Year, it is the the Genesis Electrify GV70, the Kia EV9, and Volvo withdrew the Volvo EX30 because they said it's not going to be available until late spring. And so rather, if it had been available earlier, they would have left it in. But since it's going to be coming in so late, they withdrew it. And they put in the car that got the fourth highest number of votes, which is the Hyundai Kona.
Yes. So the Kona shifted.
A Hyundai Motor Group vehicle will absolutely be the 2024 North American Utility Vehicle of the Year.
It's just a matter of which one of the Hyundai Motor Group vehicles it's going to be. So
they love those things too.
Yeah.
They just build cars that win awards, and then of course that helps people because an award-winning car is usually built really nice.
Yeah.
You're like, oh yeah, there you go.
It's a good one. A bunch of people said it was good. Yeah, so those are so we could have the Accord being and we get to announce that. Are you going to come? Are you going to be at the awards, Sam?
I will be there, absolutely.
I will be there.
It's
I get
local
to go
to
on
me,
stage and try not to say anything wrong or trip up the steps. It's the most stressful part of my entire job as a member of the board for NACTOY.
Have you tried rapping?
Have I tried rapping? No, that's not going to happen. That is not going to happen. So
all right.
So there you go. There's the Honda Accord Sport Hybrid and a rundown of what NACTOY awards are happening in another week.
Anything else on the Accord? Any other thoughts?
That's it. Those are my big thoughts.
Okay. Well, I also had a hybrid. I had the Alfa Romeo Tonale Ti all-wheel drive. Back in the summer, sometime in the summer, I had the Dodge Hornet, which was announced summer of 2022, and basically was a Tonale with a Dodge Durango looking grille front fascia on it. And when the Hornet came out earlier this spring, the original plan for the Tonale when they announced it last year was that it was supposed to be available both as a 2-liter 4-cylinder turbo or as a plug-in hybrid. And after they decided to make the Hornet, they decided, we're going to drop the base model of the Tonale so that it's kind of a step up from the Hornet. And so the Hornet right, at least at launch, was available only with that 2-liter turbo. And at some point, I think they're going to get the plug-in hybrid. But the Tonale is plug-in hybrid only. And this is it's a same type of plug-in hybrid system that they use on a couple of Jeep models in Europe, on the Compass and on the Renegade in Europe. So it's similar to what Volvo does with their plug-in hybrids, where rather than like Toyota and Ford and others, they integrate the electric motor into the transmission on the front axle. Alfa Romeo and Stellantis, as a whole, and Volvo, they do what's called a through-the-road hybrid. So the electric motor is on the rear axle. So when you're in electric drive is coming from its rear-wheel drive when it's just in pure electric mode, and then the front wheels are driven by the engine. And so on the Tonale, it's got a 1.3 liter 4-cylinder turbo on driving the front wheels, and 121 horsepower electric motor on the rear axle, for a total of 285 horsepower, which is pretty good amount of power for a smaller crossover like this. The EPA rates the electric driving range of the Tonale at 33 miles, and in hybrid mode, that claims 77 mpge, or combined using that electric driving range plus hybrid mode, you get 77 mpge in typical driving. And then when you're just in pure hybrid mode, it's supposed to be about 29 miles per gallon. I went and took this thing on my usual drive loop that I do when I'm testing electric range, especially for plug-in hybrids. I got 36 miles of electric range out of this thing.
Ooh.
And that's, without hypermiling it or anything. I wasn't, lead footing it. I was just kind of driving normally.
Just doing your drive.
Just doing a regular Sam drive.
And that, that 121 horsepower on the rear axle doesn't seem like a lot, but it's plenty. It's because, and Alfa Romeo doesn't list what the torque of the electric motor alone is. The combined torque with the motor and the engine is 347 foot-pounds. So, I'm guessing it's somewhere above 200 foot-pounds of torque from that little electric motor, which works really well. It's a nice combination. And like I said, 36 miles of electric range on a charge. Can't complain about that. And then, when you do put your foot down, even when it's in, electric mode, if you floor it, it will turn on the engine, and give you the full 285 horsepower. The battery is a 15.5 kilowatt hour battery. Takes a couple hours to charge on a level 2 charger at home on a 240 volt charger. But probably about 2.5 hours. Charges about 7.5 kilowatts. The size of this of the Tonale, I think, is a nice size for a crossover. It's not too big, not too small. It's got reasonable amount of backseat room for a couple of adults. It's not, it's not huge, but for anybody up to probably 6'1", maybe 6'2", you'll be able to fit in there reasonably comfortably. You probably don't want to put 3 people in the back unless they're, very friendly or very slim, or kids. You can put 3 kids in the back. But for adults, 2 is a good size in there. Typical, what we've come to be familiar with on Alfa Romeos since the Giulia came out back in, 5-6 years ago now, with the start-stop button is on the steering wheel in the lower left quadrant. So just below the left-hand spoke is where you find the stop-start button. And every time I get back into an Alfa for the first time after not being in one for a while, it's like I have to get reaccustomed to where it is, because I always want to reach with my right hand on the dashboard for the stop-start button. And, of course, on this one, it's on I got to do it with my left hand or reach across with my right hand. And the Tonale has the Uconnect 5 infotainment system, which is shared with most other Stellantis vehicles in North America. It works fine. It's an Android system, but without Google Automotive Services. So it's TomTom navigation, Amazon Alexa for voice, and then a few other things that they've mixed in there as well. It works fine. The interface is good. It's smooth, fast, pretty robust. It's got wireless Android Auto and Apple CarPlay support. I did find one weird anomaly in this one, which is if I was using Android Auto wirelessly and I went and I put my phone, which is a Google Pixel 8 Pro, on the wireless charging pad, which is below the center stack. Normally, on a lot of most cars, when you put your phone down on the charging pad, it'll pop up a little notification saying, charging has started, wireless charging has started. No problem. In the case of the Tonale, for some reason, it would pop that notification up about every 3 seconds. So it'd pop up.
Oh, so it'd make a connection and losing, making and losing, and making and losing.
It seems that way, yeah.
So that's annoying.
Yeah, so I notified I notified Nick over at Stellantis because he's the PR guy for Alfa Romeo, and told him what was going on, sent him a little video clip, and he was going to share that with the engineering team. I haven't heard anything back yet because that was just before the holidays. But other than that, everything else worked really well in here. I thought the ride quality, the tuning of the suspension was actually a little better than in the Dodge. It felt a little smoother, but also a little more, little better controlled than in the Hornet. Like I said, the size is good. Can't complain about the electric range. So if you're looking for a premium, and the materials and fit and finish and everything in this thing were great. If you're looking for premium compact crossover, the Tonale is definitely one that's worth taking a look at, especially because for now at least it's only available as a plug-in hybrid. So it's all-wheel drive plug-in hybrid. If you definitely don't buy this if you don't live somewhere where you can plug it in daily. For that matter, don't buy any plug-in hybrid unless you have someplace you can plug it in.
Yeah, it's kind of like...
Because then you're wasting money, you're wasting battery.
You're just dragging a battery around.
Yeah, you're hauling around 400 pounds of battery for no reason.
Yeah.
But if you do have someplace to plug it in daily, then it's a great option. The TI, the Sprint, which is the base trim level, starts at $43,845. The TI that I had is $46,500, and the Veloce is $51,040. The as equipped, the total sticker price on the one that I was driving came to $49,090. Any guesses on destination?
It's still $1,200.
I'm gonna go 1,100.
This is a Stellantis vehicle, and we know what Stellantis has been doing with destination charges.
Yeah, that's why I went high.
$1,595.
Man, that's even higher than I thought. I was like, oh man, I should have gone $1,195.
Yeah, $1,600 for destination.
Ooh.
Wow.
My first car cost $1,500. I'm just saying.
A car or the destination fee on your Alfa?
That was a long time ago, though, so I guess,
The only two options on this one were the Alfa Rosso exterior paint, which is $500, so it's a nice bright red paint, and the customer preferred package, which has the active assist advanced package. So that gets you lane centering and adaptive cruise control, the auto dimming rear view mirror, exterior mirrors, the surround view camera system, automatic park assist, and then the park sense. So that was $2,000. So for around about 50 grand, compared to other premium crossovers, competitors for this might be something like the Lincoln Corsair Grand Touring, which is also a plug-in hybrid. there's no plug-in hybrid version of the Volvo XC40, is there?
Isn't there an XC40 recharge? Is that a plug-in?
Yeah, no, it's an EV.
Yeah, there's
The
an EV.
recharge EV. Yeah, I think there is a plug-in of the.
I don't think
Yeah.
so.
But I think Audi. Let's see, Audi's got a Q5 plug-in hybrid, which doesn't get nearly as much range as this. So for and the Lincoln was more expensive than this. And frankly, I think this was more fun to drive. It's quite enjoyable to drive this thing. So, and I did try the wireless charging pad with an iPhone, no problem. So it was just
Weird.
there was some weird interaction with the Pixel 8 that was going on here. But other than that, this, like I say, if you're looking for a plug-in hybrid premium compact crossover, this should definitely be on your shopping list.
Part of what I like I really like the car too. I think it's a decent little car.
And didn't you drive a Tonale for the Mille Miglia?
I did. I drove that for the Mille Miglia that they did the warm up in Virginia. What was it? The end of October, beginning of November this year. So I spent a good bit of time in it. Really enjoyed driving it. But part of what I like about it, and also Montreal Verde, the green color, is the color you should get, because that color is just nobody else is a green quite that. Like Mazda for red, Alfa for that green.
Yes.
Oh yeah,
that's a fantastic
the Alfa greens.
Oh my god, it's so pretty. But it the thing with Alfa, you don't see a lot of them, which is so when you drive it, it's unique. Like you get this it's not as common as you're not seeing it everywhere. Even when you go to other sort of premium vehicles, there just aren't a heck of a lot of Alfas on the road. So it's kind of nice to see something a little different. I think it stands out, and people are like, "What the heck are you driving?" So that's a nice little fun thing.
Yeah, and you were mentioning the lights showing up, the brake lights and turn signals showing up in the Accord instrument cluster. On the Alfa, when you start it up, it shows you a pattern that looks like the headlights and the grill, the triangle grill. Yeah. And then when you shut it off, you get it flows through and gives you the tail lights from behind. So it's a nice little detail.
It's nice. I think details kind of make it fun. Like you can buy a lot,
especially when you're spending that kind of money on a car.
Exactly, you're spending a little extra, so you want it to feel a little extra, and it gives you that little extra.
Feels a little nice. A
little extra.
So I said that I didn't drive anything, and I forgot that I rented a car in Pittsburgh.
In the Berg, what'd you drive in the
Berg? I drove the Volvo C40 Recharge.
Oh,
they had one in the rental fleet.
They had one in the rental fleet, so I showed up
from Hertz.
Yep, from Hertz. And when I got there, it's like, oh, you get to go to the President's Club, and you can just pick any car that's over there. And so I wanted an EV because we have charging at SAE International at the headquarters. So I could just go and just charge my car at work. And I'd already had a Model 3, so I was just like, all right, I don't want one of those again. And I was hoping I could get a Volvo or a Polestar or whatever else they have over there at Hertz. And they had the C40 Recharge. I drove this in Belgium. Oh my God, it feels like 100 years ago when it first came out. I really liked it. It's really just the XC40 with a swoopy back. It's literally just the XC40 with a swoopy back
and less rear visibility.
Yeah, you can't see as much, but it's also just an XC40 with a swoopy back.
Exactly what it looks like. I'm looking at the profiles right now, the two of them next to each other. You're totally right.
Yeah, no, it's like the XC40 like this. Like the XC40, this just has like it has so much power. The XC40 and the C40 have a surprising amount of get up and go. Like you're like, oh gosh, like it's that sort of situation where they have more power than they probably should, to be honest. But no, I liked it. It was really, really cold. It was 30 degrees like the entire time I was there, so it really cut into the old what do you call it, range. But for the most part, it was comfortable. It was more comfortable than the Model 3 that I drove from the Hertz barn of cars. And it was just it's just a bit of a nicer experience, and it has Google Voice and all that jazz.
What was the experience like renting an EV from Hertz? Was the car charged up? And
so I got into the car and had 67% charge. And you get in the car and then it's just like, pick a car, and I'm like, all right. And you get in the car and then you go to the little booth as you're leaving, and then they print out the thing and then you have to drive away. So they printed out the thing and I drove away, and I made a mental note. They had charging stations like along all the parking spots there, but it just
At the
wasn't
office?
charging
At the Hertz
garage.
location? Okay.
At the Hertz location. So they had like in the garage, they had charging stations. None of the EVs were plugged in. I don't know why. So at 67%, I'm like, all right, that's how much I have to bring it back. And then I drove around and I did all my stuff and I charged it at work. But it turns out we had a half day because I was there for a holiday party, so I didn't get to charge it all the way. So after work, I just I went and got some dinner, and then I was like, oh, I'll just go to the EA station. That was a failure. So then I went to another station.
I'm shocked.
There was an EV Go station about 12 miles away. So I'm just driving around Pennsylvania. It was, whatever. It's nice. I got a chai latte and I had a nice little time just sitting there hanging out. But then I'm sitting there waiting for this vehicle to charge, and it's charging at like 70 kilowatts or something. And I'm like, all right, good enough, whatever. And I'm reading the thing. It's like, you picked up this car at 100% charge, and you have to return it at 100% charge. And I'm like, that's impossible. That is physically impossible to return it at 100% charge because the paperwork. So if you're like thinking, if you're like, oh my God, how much charge did I have? Or you're thinking you have to come back with 100% charge because you don't know any better. That's really confusing. That's kind of terrifying, to be honest.
That you have to bring it back, because
it's impossible. It's impossible.
Well,
there was like one charging station like 5 miles from the airport that you could go to. But let's say I went there and I waited till it charged to 100%, which is just dumb.
You're not 100. You're 99 something.
It's not
and then you're like, get there and you're like 98 because it's like 30 degrees outside. I showed up 68%. I felt really good.
So what did they say? Did they say anything when you showed up?
No, there was no one there because I had a 6 a.m. flight. So I just
did they
left
charge
the car.
you or anything? Because
nope. I double checked.
Russ, they didn't. Okay, because Russ had rented. He got a Polestar once. I want to say it was Polestar from Hertz. Mm-hmm. And the first time he rented it was like he was also got stuck by that. Like it's at a place where you could charge, and it's like it was at like 52% charge, and he thought he would have 100% to get where he wanted to cause this big headache. He's like, I wasn't planning on stopping to charge the second I got in the car. So that was a surprise. But then also it said, like, it's like, oh, you have to bring it back 100%. And he's like, how? Like, how? How would one do that? So he's like, I bring it back as close as I can. And he looked at it, there wasn't a charge. But I'm thinking, I know people who said they won't get one because they're like, well, I don't want to. I'm worried they are going to charge me something. Like, what's the quote fill up?
So I would just take a picture because, like, if I get a gas car and it's got 3/4 of a tank, I have to return it with 3/4 of a tank. That's the rule,
right?
If I get an EV, I think it should be charged to 80%. That seems like a nice fair number. 80%. You can charge it to 90. It's going to take a little while, but it's not. You don't lose too much speed as you go from 80 to 90, and then you can show up at 80%. 70%, I think, is ideal, to be honest.
Yeah, it's weird. I've heard this complaint, so I'm glad.
But the idea, like, the idea, like, I'm like, nope. I took a picture of it, and there's no one there. You just leave the keys in the car and walk away.
Yeah.
And I was just like, well, I'm getting ready. I was like cracking my knuckles. I'm like, I'm getting ready to fight with somebody on Tuesday when I get back from because I was flying to New York. When I get back from New York, I'm getting ready to fight.
He's all like wound up.
I'm like, here we go.
Thank you, sir. Oh, wait. Thank you, sir. Okay, bye.
But it was crazy that it wasn't even plugged. Like, all these EVs were sitting there, and then there was charging stations, and none of them were plugged in. I'm like,
And this is one of the problems that rental companies like Hertz have with doing EVs is especially like at their high volume airport locations. There with gas vehicles, they typically turn those around in about 20 to 30 minutes. So when you bring it back, it's usually that same car is usually rented out within half an hour. Again, gone with somebody else.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so charging, it turns out to be a real problem for them. Now, at a lot of the Hertz locations, when they did their last earnings report, they talked about their challenges with EVs, among which, it turns out they bought all these EVs and a lot of their locations didn't have chargers. But it sounds like in Pittsburgh they at least had chargers, but they weren't using.
And it's a small airport too. It's not a big. It's not a big airport, so they don't have to turn them. So that's why I'm like still confused. I'm like, why are these things not being charged?
But from other anecdotal
LAX,
reports I've heard, other reports I've heard, at some locations they're actually having to send staff from their rental location out with these EVs to a local public charger and sit there and wait while they charge and then bring them back again,
That
which
doesn't make
that is
sense.
not very cost effective for for a
I
rental.
feel like if you're like EVgo or Electrify America, you should just be like, hey, I'm gonna put up a giant station next to all of the EV or the the rental places, and then I'm gonna charge market rate. I'm not giving you a deal.
Yeah.
And they're all going to be there. Like, well, we got to charge. You just have to make sure they all work. They'll have to have like people on staff to make sure the machines work because
it'll be in your job description. Just like, what do you do? I just charge the EVs for Hertz. That's all I do.
And we with gas cars, you go to a gas station, even if the gas station's a couple of miles away or 5 miles away.
Yeah.
You fill it up. And it's still basically, the gauge is still showing full. It doesn't give you that level of precision.
It could be at like 95% and still show completely full.
Exactly. Yeah. Whereas, in an EV, it's showing you exactly what the state of charge is.
This is exactly your 107.34 kilowatt hours.
Yeah. Like you said, they need to have like a minimum, say 90% or
90%
whatever they want it to be.
80%.
If they want it full, it should be, more than 90%.
You think about too, depending on where you're renting a car from.
Yeah.
Like if you really are if you're really kind of in the middle of nowhere, especially if you're not bringing it back to the same Hertz that you got it from, if you're doing a road, you don't know what you're going to run into for EV chargers when you get to the other Hertz location. You might not have one, but like you said, Robbie, you might have to drive a little bit from wherever you charge to the airport. How are you going to, that's impossible.
That's literally why I got the Model 3 the first time I went over there. Because I'm like, well, I know Tesla's charging infrastructure is everywhere. Yeah. So I'm going to get this because I've never been to Pittsburgh. I'm the sustainability editor. It'd be nice if I showed up in an EV.
and of course, Electrify America was, right on par with their usual
it was like a quarter mile away. I could see it. I could see the Electrify from my hotel. And it's like 2 machines are down. Nope, now 3 machines are down, but 2 of them are available. And I'm like, all right, fine. So I went out, drove, and it turns out those 2 that weren't of it, the 3 machines were down, but 2 of them were in use, and there was someone waiting. And I was and I just pulled up the one of the charging apps that shows you all the chargers, and I'm like, all right, there's one 10 miles away. I'll just go get a coffee. I'll stop by Starbucks. It'll be a nice little trip. I like driving, so it's not that big of a deal. But if you're like, I got things to do,
that is a big deal. Yeah.
Well, the C40, you could just go, say, hey, Google, find EV charging stations near me, and it'll pull them up on Google Maps.
Yeah, I could have done that too. I always forget about that just because most cars aren't good at that still.
Yeah.
Like my Hyundai Kona doesn't have anything fancy like that.
Aww.
All right. Well, so what's the weather like where the 2 of you are right now?
It's
like April.
Let me see.
Okay. Yeah.
Let me see.
It's about the same here.
It's currently 42 degrees and it's really foggy and a little bit drizzly. So it's very unwinter where I am.
It's 51 here in Ypsilanti.
It's 55 and cloudy and gusty winds with a little bit of rain.
Ooh, there's some weather.
We get a lot of gusty winds.
And I live next to a golf course, and there were people out playing golf yesterday.
Were they really? Yeah, because it's been that warm.
Yeah. In some places they apparently still get snow.
Canada.
No way.
TFL posted a good video about a week and a half ago where Tommy Micah, Roman's son, did a comparison with comparing all-season tires, snow chains, and snow socks. Have either of you ever tried snow socks?
I've never tried snow socks.
Yeah,
I've only put chains on one car in my entire life, even though I grew up where there was snow, because everyone in my town refused to put chains on their cars. They're like, no. Like the whole town just was like, no.
Yeah, I've never seen chains on a car. I've never put them on a car. I've never even driven a car with them because I've never been in a situation where I actually needed them.
Yeah,
I had it going to Tahoe because Tahoe's like, it's windy roads. Like Tahoe snow is like super dense and thick, so it's really slick. It's called Sierra Cement. So they make you put chains on. And I was in a friend's car.
I know,
and
never again. Signs as you drive up the mountain, it says, use snow chains from here up.
Yeah.
Turns out that in this test, the snow socks actually turned out to be the the most effective, way more effective than the chains or just snow tires.
Really?
Yeah. And so what these are, basically, they call it a sock. It's essentially kind of like a sock that you put on your tires, and it wraps over, and you take it out, you wrap it over the top part, the 3/4 of the tire, and then you get in, you roll the car forward a foot, and then put the last bit of it on, and it's made of this woven material that actually grabs the snow, and it turns out that when you actually have the snow on snow is when you actually get the best traction.
Right.
And you got by far the best performance in terms of both acceleration and braking with the snow socks.
It's funny when the snow sock, when I did rent a car while I was in Europe, and I was in Switzerland, and they had a whole bunch of these behind the counter, little packs of snow socks that you could rent. And that was like the first time I ever saw them. But I guess they kind of know in Switzerland what they're talking about, maybe.
Well, I was so impressed by what I saw in the video that immediately after watching it, I went on Amazon and ordered a pair of those and had them sent to my daughter who lives in Denver.
Has she tried it yet?
Not yet, but in the city of Denver, they don't get as much snow. But if she goes up into the mountains, to go skiing or snowboarding or something, or do something in the mountains,
whatever the kids are doing these days.
Yeah. So I sent them to her and said, here, put just keep these in the back of your car because they don't take up a lot of space. Keep them in the back of your car because I know last year, she went somewhere and had borrowed a friend's Subaru. She traded in a couple months ago, traded in her Toyota 86 for a new Mazda CX-30 with all-wheel drive. But even with the Subaru last winter, she got stuck somewhere and called and was asking what's the best thing to do. And so I figured
because she's so low to the ground.
Yeah. So, well, that was with the Subaru, not with the 86.
Yeah. That's what I mean.
Yeah. So, I figured probably good for her to have these snow socks. So, you should. We'll have the video in the show notes, but it's worth a look to see how well these things perform. They're pretty impressive.
Are they easier to put on than chains?
Oh, way easier than chains.
Chains are such a huge pain in the butt.
That was one of the things. They were timing. How long it took to put on the chains versus putting on the snow socks.
Oh God.
The chains to put snow chains on the two front tires, I think took them something like 15 minutes. The snow socks took 2.5 minutes.
Yeah, when you drive up to Tahoe to go snowboarding or skiing or any of that stuff, they have guys who just hang out alongside the road
to help.
And you just pay them like $40-$50 to put your chains on. They'll just put them on for you. Yeah. Yeah, so me and a friend, he's like, hey, let's go snowboarding. I'm like, all right, cool. And then he pulled up in his car, and I'm like, oh, no. And then we drove up, and I was like, I think my wife needed the car. That's why I wasn't driving my car, my Subaru. And we had to get out and put chains on.
So if you have to have chains, do you have to have chains even at like someplace where you have to have chains? Like if you have snow tires, if you have all season,
if you have all-wheel drive and all seasons are better, you can continue up the hill.
Okay, so if you had so all you need is all-wheel drive in all seasons. You don't even need snow tires. So the snow would the snow sock work sub for the snow chains if you did?
Oh yeah, I'm sure they would. And you get a red one, so it looks like your car's are. I believe they would. Yeah, I'm sure they would.
And the only thing to keep in mind with either chains or snow socks is you're limited to 25 miles an hour.
Yeah, you got to go real slow.
Oh, so it's just slow speed driving, which I guess if you have chains, you're probably
if you're driving on the snow like that,
okay.
So, if you're able to get beyond those speeds, then you should take them off.
Yeah. So, but I did have someone I was in the Subaru, and someone had snuck up at the Subaru with like Summers.
Oh, jeez.
And he couldn't pull out the spot because there's a tiny little incline. And so he parked his blue car. It looked just like mine. It was the bug eye, early 2000s WRX sport wagon next to mine, and he could not pull out of his spot, and he starts sliding into my car, and I'm just standing next to my car holding his car off. And I finally I was like, do you want me to pull your car out? And he's just frustrated and like he's got dude anger. He's just like, I'm like, how about we can help you push. When I said that, do you want me to help you? Do you want me to pull out for you? He got really, you could tell I like bruised his ego, and I felt bad asking after I said it. I was like, we can just push you out.
We'll just
and then we
drove. Trying to be kind.
I just don't want you hitting my car.
Yeah. Well, what you should have done was just wait here for a minute, hopped in your car, pulled your car out.
Yeah. Now go.
Yes.
Now go.
Do what you want.
Yeah. The wheel's just spinning. I'm like, all-wheel drive doesn't help you when you got, because it's just ice in the parking lots at
Yeah.
That's just my little.
Been there, done that. Not with snow tires, or not with summer tires, but yeah, been in those conditions.
Also, he didn't understand. He didn't know how to drive in the snow, so he was just like gunning it. I'm like, no, dude, come on.
All right. Last week when Stephanie was here, we talked about the Chevy Blazer EV. Both of us had a chance to drive it the week before out in California.
I didn't get to drive it because I was on vacation.
Yeah.
Ding, 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 ding.
So overall, we were both quite impressed with it, from the driving experience,
Okay.
During the time we had to drive it, we had about an hour and a half the first day, about three and a half hours the second day in the morning before we flew back. And I think we drove, probably about 200 miles all in, between the two sessions, and really impressed with it. It, drives really nice. I think it's a little bit too wide. It's like 4 inches wider than a Mach-E or a Model Y. And it's also very heavy. And it's also very expensive.
What's the starting price on it?
Well, right now they have the 2LT with the all-wheel drive is like $54,000
for a Blazer.
The base front-wheel drive LT when it comes out sometime next year is going to be just shy of $50,000.
Oh, that's too.
I'm just going to keep saying for a Blazer. I'm sorry.
Yeah, the rear-wheel drive RS, which is the most powerful version they currently have, is like $61,000. If you configure it, get this.
The look on your face is like you just ate a lemon. You're like, no.
If you configure it similarly to a Cadillac Lyriq, it is actually more expensive than a Lyriq. Even though it's the same battery, same motors, it's the same platform.
Such
it's
a weird
same size.
Okay, fine.
Okay, Chevy.
Or you can just get a Mach-E or a Ioniq 5.
But it drives really well. The driving dynamics were really good. The front seats do kind of suck. They're too flat and don't have enough support. And I'm sure the SS will have better seats, but the RS should have better seats than it does. But
for the price.
I think what they do is they put the cop car seats, because there's going to be a police version of this. They put the cop car seats in the RS, and they always say for cop cars they don't have the really tight side bolsters because the cops have the big utility belts and they're getting in and out. And I think that's what they put in these RSs. But we didn't have any issues with any technical issues with a couple of different Blazers that we drove during the time we were there. Infotainment system worked really well, and this is the first of their Android automotive systems without CarPlay and without Android Auto support. And there's a video on the Wheel Bearings YouTube channel where I did a walkthrough with one of the product managers of the infotainment system. You can see how it works with an iPhone. It all worked fine for us. However, others that have had these, the ones that they had at the drive program were great.
Well, I heard a couple friends, a couple other people I know were on the drive program. They had some where the infotainment system just turned off.
Oh, did it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So there was a few little weird glitches, and they're like, okay, like when we had the Lyriq, they're like, all right, these are pre-production. What are you gonna do?
Well, they've actually been selling these. They started delivering these in October to customers, to paying customers.
Yeah, that's the weird
late
thing.
September. And Edmunds bought one. They got their hands on one of the very first ones sold to a customer. And they were actually driving the Blazer down from their office near LA down to Del Mar where the drive program was. And ran into a whole bunch of issues with it. The infotainment system went bonkers on them. They only have 1,600 miles on it, and when it went into the dealer to get checked out, it had 23 fault codes.
Oof.
23.
Yeah.
That's so many fault codes.
And I'm pretty sure it wasn't just the 12-volt battery going dead.
Yeah.
Because they had fault codes like, service the 12-volt system, service the high voltage system, service vehicle soon, the infotainment system, unable to charge, service charging system. I mean, there's all kinds of issues.
Wow.
And then the week after the drive in California, the Inside EVs got one. One of their writers, Kevin Williams, got one delivered to his home in Ohio from the press fleet, from the GM press fleet. And he was driving it to, I think he was going to Virginia for the holidays. And within 28 hours after he got it, it left him completely stranded. He had plugged it in to an Electrify America charger, after which it started getting all kinds of problems. He was having problems with the infotainment system crashing even before that. But then after trying to charge it at an EA station, it was just completely dead. And this part of it may not actually be a GM problem, because there's been reports of other vehicles. I know there was some Mach-E's that got bricked after charging at EA stations. It actually fried the charging system on the car. So it may have been something related to that. But he ended up abandoning the car at this charging station and renting a car to finish his trip, and left the keys with it. And GM sent a flatbed to pick it up and bring it back to Detroit to try and diagnose it. But I think like a day or two after this story came out on Inside EVs last week, GM issued a stop sale to all their dealers to stop deliveries of the Blazer until they figure out what's going on. It sounds like from some of the issues that it's not because of some of the other problems they're having. It's clearly the infotainment system is not the root cause. It's the underlying software platform, or maybe even the battery management system software. But something else somewhere in the vehicle is causing these Blazers to just die.
That's not a good. That's not a good look.
It's not a great way to lunch.
It's also that's some bad timing. They're like, we're gonna get rid of CarPlay and electric vehicles because our infotainment system is gonna be awesome, and then this.
Yeah, well,
and whether or not it's the infotainment system or not, the fact that infotainment system just turns off means that's the and then they said, well, we're getting rid of the infotainment phone projection because it's not stable, and when it dies, people have to look at their phones. And it's a safety issue.
This unstable system.
Well, in this case, even if they had CarPlay and Android Auto, it still wouldn't have worked anyway because the whole screen was blank.
Kapoof.
Yeah, but it's that. But the idea that was one of their reasons. By like months later, they're like, oh yeah, and it's this is the reason. You're like, is it though? Yeah. And then this happened. You're like, oh.
But back last spring when they announced that they were dropping smartphone projection from their EVs, I said at the time that it's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, I've used a lot of Android automotive infotainment systems, including in other GM vehicles, and it worked fine. But it's up to GM to actually execute on doing this right if they actually want people to believe that they don't need projection.
I had a whole conversation with them about it. I'm like, you can't say you're going to stop doing a thing until you have something better to show.
That's the thing. If you're going to,
and they're like, oh yeah.
You have to, like, it's like, okay, everyone's a little bit reluctant to accept that you're making this change for good reasons. So once it actually happens, you better have that sucker nailed down. It's like, oh, you don't. That's now no one trusts at all.
It's a bad winter and fall for GM right now.
Bad,
yeah.
Bad.
But the bolts were catching fire at one point, and those things sound like hotcakes.
I mean, it's not catching fire
up for the next few days.
Right?
At least until they're all gone. I mean, they've stopped production. They've ended production, and whatever's on the dealer lots are on their way to dealers. That's it.
Oh, we should pour one out for the Bolt.
Yeah.
Get your Bolt while you can.
Poor little Bolt.
It's so hard to say goodbye to yesterday.
All right. Speaking of software problems in EVs.
Speaking of software, which, by the way, software is really, really hard.
Yes.
And it's especially hard because you have to deal with cars. And cars have to be cars. So it's, my phone, this app on my phone works fine. Yeah, if the app on your phone goes a little wonky, your car doesn't, you don't go veering into a ditch.
Right. Totally different deal.
You restart your phone, it's all good. Nobody dies.
Yeah, no one dies.
Your car goes off on its own.
That is an excuse, everyone. But I just want to say, software is super, super hard. Ask Volkswagen.
Oh, yeah.
It's taking forever to get that infotainment system. The people at Volkswagen are looking at GM. They're like, yeah, ours are just laggy.
Yeah. Ours doesn't completely crash, die,
ours still
burn.
works, sorta.
Yeah.
I remember the first ID.
It has gotten a lot better. The E.
Oh yeah, no. I drove when I drove the ID Buzz. It actually did all the things it was supposed to do. And I was like, oh, good job. That's all it has to do. Just do the things.
So anyway, Tesla, the company that's supposed to be great at doing software. Last week they announced a recall of 2 million Tesla vehicles. And I'm not going to go through all of that again, but it was supposed to make some changes in the way they do their driver monitoring. Well, Consumer Reports, they own several Teslas as part of their test fleet because they buy most of the cars that they're testing, and they got the software update, the OTA update for the recall from Tesla, and so they went out and tested their cars, and turns out it doesn't really change anything. Which is pretty much what I expected. You can still cover up the in-cabin camera, and the system will still work fine. But there's also been a bunch of other reports from other Tesla customers, on various social media sites, complaining about, now this doesn't, some other things like their forward collision warning doesn't work, and auto steer doesn't work, and other things don't work. So, and near as I can tell, Tesla has actually done at least 5 different revisions of their software since the initial recall OTA.
Whoops.
It still has some broken stuff.
The fact that you can cover up the camera it's like if I look away from that BMW camera for more than 3 seconds, it loses its mind, which is great. I think one of the first eyesight in the Subarus, the one that's inside, it doesn't even have anything to do with your driver's assistance. It's just watching you. And if I'm looking at a house, at the numbers on a house, it yells at you.
You are not paying attention. I am.
Yeah, which is to be honest, that's what we need as humans at this point because we have so many distractions. Our phones and the infotainment and all those things that are going on. We need someone to just scold us in the car. We need a I know people nanny cam. That's what
if you've got a Tesla and you're getting these updates, things probably still aren't working great for you.
Sorry. Well, at least it didn't turn off.
Yeah.
This is still going.
Yeah. Turns out hardware is also really hard, not just software.
This whole car thing is complicated, guys.
Cars are so hard.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Someone told me they were easy. Someone was a fool.
Someone lied.
Do you remember the Tesla battery day in 2020?
Oh my gosh, yeah. Was this the one who was they were outside and they were talking about the new battery, yes.
Yeah, the 4680 battery.
4680, yeah.
And they were talking about doing dry coating of the electrodes and all kinds of other cool stuff that was going to slash the cost of the battery by more than half. Well, they're still not able to do much of that.
It's
they're having a really hard time with dry coating the cells. Especially the cathodes. They can do the dry coated anodes, but they can't really do dry coated cathodes yet. And apparently they're still only able to produce enough 4680 cells to build about 24,000 Cybertrucks a year at max.
Great.
And they're aiming for about 10 times that many.
Yeah, that's not a lot. Which again, I think that I'm just going to keep saying the Cybertruck. In its current iteration, they should have said, you know what, we're only building like 1,000 of these a year. If you want another one that's built like a regular truck,
yeah,
we can have those all day. But no, Tesla, you can't
double down. They're not changing.
Double down.
Yeah.
So 24,000 people are going to get their trucks this year, and then the rest of I don't even know how many people are actually on that list anymore. Who knows? They just have to wait till next year, or until they figure it out. I mean, GM's having problems with Ultium.
Yeah, well, they're having problems with the module assembly. They're apparently
the
they're
robot
okay
or something.
Yeah, apparently they're doing okay with building cells.
Robot, he's waving his arms. I am a robot.
Sorry, I was doing factory floor robot hands. I know this is not a visual medium.
He was doing a great job though.
If you're at home, just grab your arm and fling it around awkwardly. That's what I was doing.
That's what Robbie was doing.
Yeah, apparently, according to this Reuters story, to meet their production goals for the Cybertruck, the 250,000 a year, they would need to be making 340 million 4680 cells a year, or about 1 million a day. And currently, they're able to produce about 10 million every 16 weeks. So it takes them about a week and a half, a little more than a week and a half to make 1 million cells, rather than one day.
Oof.
Yeah, so
well, I should have again. 1,000 a year. This new cell we're working on. We're gonna put the old cells in the regular truck, and we're gonna put
listening to Robbie, and it'll all be just fine.
And apparently, on a regular cell production line that's working properly, they have about a 5% scrap rate of the cells coming off the line.
Wow.
They're getting about 30 to 50% with the 4680s. Right?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow.
What's the industry average for the scrap rate?
That's what I was just wondering. What's the average?
I think that's.
Do we know?
I think that's the 5% number.
About 5%. Everyone's paying about 5%. All right.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk to Hyundai and Mercedes when I see them at CES.
So the dry coating process not working out so well for these larger cells. They can do it for really small cells like little button batteries and stuff like that, but that's not very useful for an EV.
It's just a bunch of watch batteries.
Yeah,
we're gonna fill it with watch batteries. If you've seen the TV show The Watchmen,
2 million watch batteries.
2 million. You just fill up a bucket and just pour it into the Cybertruck.
Around in there.
As you turn, it's like one of those rain sticks. You know the rain stick when you turn it upside down, it makes that noise. You know what? I would be fine with a rain stick sounding car for about a week. And that day 8, I'm like, no, I can't. No.
All right. So let me ask: Have either of you two ever rented an electric scooter, an e-scooter?
Never once in my whole life ever.
My friend rented one, and then I rode it, just so because they were having problems riding it. I'm like, well, let me try, and I was like, oh, this is fine. But I'm dumb. I have zero fear when I'm actually doing things, and I used to skateboard as a kid and a teenager, and up to my early 20s. But no, I never rented one because I was just like, I'll just take the bus.
Well, last year when I was leaving the Detroit Grand Prix, the last one on Belle Isle, I didn't feel like waiting an hour in the line for the bus to go back to where I was parked. And so I started, there's a fairly long bridge from the island back to the mainland. And there was some scooters on there. I actually tried to rent one there, and one wasn't working. Another one, when I got to it, it said it was already reserved. Somebody had already snagged it in the app. And I ended up just walking all the way across the bridge and then just grabbing a lift back to the parking area. But last week, Bird, which was the first company that did these shared e-scooters, filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. And I was in San Jose in March of 2018. I was at NVIDIA GTC. On the day when they first dropped all these scooters in San Francisco and San Jose, I walked out of the hotel to go to a dinner, and all of a sudden there's all these scooters all over the sidewalk. And I go over and look at one and saw the label on there, Bird, and saw the QR code. So I scanned it and looked up, and it turns out that day they had just dropped thousands of these things all over Silicon Valley and San Francisco. And then, the whole thing blew up from there.
It was like a reverse rapture.
Yes.
Nicole Lee and I,
instead of them all disappearing,
they all disappeared. Nicole Lee and I were walking to go get coffee, and we were like, what the hell are these things? Did someone just leave their scooter? I'm like, wait, why are all these scooters, and why are they blocking the sidewalk? Like, the first thing they did was just block the sidewalk while we were walking. I'm like, oh. It went downhill from there.
And none of these companies have actually managed to make any money off of shared scooters. So, most of them have already gone out of business. Bird was the biggest. They went public a couple of years ago through a SPAC transaction. I think they were at their peak. They were worth about $2 billion, and now they're basically worth nothing.
Are any of which rental scooter companies, are they still around? Bird
There's one
dead.
More.
There's a couple others. Spin is still around. The one that was owned by Ford for a while. Ford sold them off to another company who I can't remember the name of right now. But there's still Spin scooters around here. I think there's a couple of others.
I think Lyft still has scooters.
Yeah.
I was just Googling and I'm seeing Lyft scooters is what I'm getting.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it was funny because Bird's like, we're leaving San Francisco because everyone's so mean to us. And everyone's, if we get it, these tickets, we're getting all these tickets. No one's writing you tickets. No one wrote a single ticket about, but they were like, there's these giant fines. I'm like, show us where you guys were fined. And they're like, there were giant fines. And the reality was they just weren't making money.
Yeah. I mean, they started off, just buying thousands of scooters off of Alibaba, just consumer scooters that, they're not
made for hundreds of rides.
I think they typically lasted about 6 weeks before they had to be thrown out and replaced. And since then they've got purpose-built scooters, but they're a lot more expensive, and not enough people using them to make it worthwhile.
And then electric scooters got stupid easy cheap. So people just bought them themselves. Like if you walk on a college campus, they're just like kids riding around on their own scooter that they like just cruise around in.
I found one called Unagi scooters.
Oh, I never heard of that.
It's trying to be very hip. They're trying to be super hip. You can fold them up. You just carry them like a tiny little thing.
Tiny little thing.
Tiny little thing. It's got a little app. And there's people that are driving. There's a whole community forging social connections. This is very dramatic.
Yeah, and then I think the rise of the increase in sales of e-bikes didn't help either.
These you rent for your own for the month. It's like
e-bikes are
for a month or
so much safer.
Mm-hmm.
You sit down. So you pedals.
Yeah, I would much rather ride an e-bike than
I haven't ridden the scooter because I know my own sense of balance. I'm not committing.
Like my feet don't fit on them. Like I can't put one foot because my feet are too big. Yeah, they're not long enough.
On the other hand, though, if I lived in an apartment, I would, like if I lived in New York somewhere and had to walk up, I would probably take one of the get one of these fold-up scooters instead.
Yeah,
e-bikes are pretty heavy.
You can get the Go Cycle, which is really it's the only folding one that's worth like carrying up and downstairs, because folding e-bikes are typically about 60 to 70. I did a whole review about these things. They're like 60 to 70 pounds for a regular one. It's really just to like fold it to put in your vehicle to go somewhere or to store it. But you can't 70-pound e-bike, and they're all floppy and everything. Yeah. No, you don't know. But the Go Cycle one.
The Tsunagi is pretty cool because
the Unagi, right? Do you see it? Like it folds. It didn't catch the weight, but it folds into almost like suitcasey sized kind of.
Well, and then of course there's the Honda Moto Compacto.
Oh yeah, that's even
scooter,
which truly just sounds cool. What do you have? I have a Moto Compacto. What is it?
It makes you sound like a lot cooler than you probably are.
It does. Like you're suddenly cool when you drive.
You can rent one of these by the month.
Yeah,
that's it.
$40 a month.
What is this company? Like this is kind of cool, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you
shipping, servicing.
Right? Yeah, if you live in an apartment or something, and you need to carry it up. Yeah, you just take it with you and you plug it in.
Oh, this company's gone out of business at some point. But you know what? You're gonna get a free scooter when they go out of $40 a month to rent a scooter that they ship to your house. Yeah, that's not gonna last. You can buy them for $1,500, or you can rent it for $40.
Well,
So I'm just saying
for 40,
rent
that's
for
480
40
bucks a year. That's 3 years. I mean, if you buy one, how long is it going to last? It's going to last 3 years.
Maybe. I'm just saying that this company's not going to last 3 years for charging 40 bucks.
It only weighs 28 pounds. Is it 28.5 pounds? Or it looks like there's a fancier one because that's 12 miles. The 25-mile one weighs 29.6 pounds.
Looks like you can also buy the Inagi scooters too.
You can, but you could
Yeah,
just
they're
rent one.
15.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can just rent it until it breaks and then you ship it back.
Yeah.
I've never heard of this company before.
Neither have I.
You just get your Inagi scooter. When it goes out of business, now you have a free scooter.
Okay, maybe that's what I mean. I need an Unagi scooter.
I would still get a bike.
I would still get a bike first.
Yeah.
I would still get a bike first.
Unless you like, again, that walk up.
So when you guys need to go to the airport or something, you ride the Hyperloop to get there, right?
All the time.
Always. That's
nonstop. I get inside of a tube. I get inside of a thing, inside of a tube. And then we wait for the tube to become a vacuum. So we wait for all the air to get sucked out. And we sit there and we wait and we wait and we wait and we wait. And then it has to make sure all the air sucked out from here to the airport. And I wait and I wait. And then I get there 3 hours later.
But from the time you started, like from the time the air got sucked out till you got to the airport,
oh, that was
only like 10 minutes, right?
Yeah, that was nothing. It was just waiting for air to get sucked out.
Yeah.
Oh, now we got a pinhole. There's a pinhole somewhere.
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of people suspected, and it's almost certainly true that when Elon Musk first published his little alpha paper about the Hyperloop idea back in 2013, that all he was trying to do was literally derail the California high-speed rail project.
Yep.
And shortly after, a bunch of companies, a bunch of startups popped up and raised a bunch of venture capital, to develop Hyperloops, and slowly, one by one, they've all fallen by the wayside.
There's a lot of money that went in this.
Yeah,
I covered Hyperloop. That was like on my beat. I covered Hyperloop. I went to a couple of the Hyperloop events at SpaceX where all the college kids were going. And I would always just say, I'm like, this is never going to happen. But the things that the college kids were coming up could be applicable to other transportation. But I was always like, yeah, this isn't going to happen. And then there would always be like some journalists like, no, this is going to happen. I'm like, I really want you to sit down and think about it.
Well, I used in the talks that I do at conferences, on mobility and other stuff. One of the slides, one of the things I always talked about was the need for multimodal mobility ecosystems. Having buses, trains, micromobility, robotaxis,
scooters,
a bunch of different things. And I always had a picture of a Hyperloop on there. One of the renderings, and I said, and who knows, maybe someday you might even have one of these, but probably not. And it looks like it ain't going to happen.
It just didn't make any sense.
This week, Hyperloop One shut down, laying off all its staff. And this company has gone through a few different transitions over the years. Different names. At one point, it was bought by Richard Branson, and it was renamed Virgin Hyperloop. But when I think it was like in 2016 or 17, I was at the SAE World Congress in Detroit, and I talked with a guy who was one of the co-founders of this company when it was still called Hyperloop Technologies. The original name of the company. His name was Brogan Bam Brogan, which...
Really?
Oh, God, I remember him.
Yeah, I talked to him.
That's
yeah.
I was like, is that his real name? I was concerned that maybe we were getting scammed.
Yeah. But, well, he eventually got pushed out of...
him, and he kind of looks like a supervillain.
Yeah. He eventually got pushed out of the company after claims of harassment and other issues. So
Hyperloop.
Yeah,
Never forget. I went to a Hyperloop event where they had one that just went down a rail, like a train.
Yeah.
I was like, okay. There's video of it.
On the other hand, there's an LA Times story today that apparently the California high-speed rail program is actually picking up steam and moving forward. So hopefully that will eventually happen. And there's actually there's a high-speed rail program that's actually running in Florida now, between Miami and Fort Lauderdale or somewhere.
Everyone's super excited about the Las Vegas to LA
Yeah, I hear
high-speed
people
rail.
talking about that
Yeah.
one.
Yeah, everyone's like, yeah. The high-speed rail. When I worked at Kinko's, I saw all the plans before they were public because they would bring them to the Kinko's I worked at. And I was like, hey, this is going through my hometown. It just blasts through my hometown. If it ever happens, it just blasts through Tehachapi. No one in Tehachapi gets to ride the rail. You just get to watch it
No
fly
stop
by.
there. It's just an express train between LA and Vegas.
Yeah, I think it maybe stops in like probably Bakersfield and maybe Lancaster, but definitely not Tehachapi.
All right. So we mentioned CarPlay earlier. Last year in 2022 at the Worldwide Developers Conference that Apple has, they announced their next generation CarPlay system, which is supposed to be able to project not just onto one center screen, but onto a whole bunch of, all the screens in your car, including your instrument cluster. And I was always kind of dubious of that idea because the other thing they said was, and it's still going to run off your device. So why you would want to have the instrument cluster being projected from your phone is unclear to me.
Exactly. Yeah.
You still have, you still have to have, a built-in system, for, if your phone's dead or not working, your battery dies, you lose your connection.
You break it.
You still have to have the instrument cluster display there anyway, and there's got to be a built-in embedded system that works. I mean, that's required by federal regulations. And they put up a slide showing a whole bunch of automaker logos saying all these automakers are going to use next-gen CarPlay, and among those I think was a GM logo, if I'm not mistaken.
Awkward.
Anyway, nobody ever made any announcements until last week. Apple put out a couple of Photoshop renderings and announced that Aston Martin and Porsche were going to debut the next gen CarPlay next year. I think in the Porsche, it's going to be in the new Macan EV, which it just happens to be running Android Automotive as its base.
Yeah, that's another fun.
So next gen CarPlay running on top of Android Automotive will be fun. But the rendering that they showed here for the Aston Martin is kind of funny. If you look at the center screen, it's clearly a Photoshop because it's not even angled correctly. They didn't skew it correctly.
It's not lined up with the actual.
Yeah.
Just gonna shove it on there.
Stick that on there like a little.
Hey, should we have someone who knows how to do Photoshop? No, just do it. We gotta. Oh my god! That's the day. That's what happened.
Yeah.
Oh no! I didn't realize that was today. Whoops.
All right, so maybe next gen CarPlay coming to Aston Martin and Porsche next year, or not. And then last one.
We're very excited about the next gen CarPlay. Like, I don't know, whatever.
Last one is the Cadillac Celestiq. The first one has been spotted out on public roads, a prototype.
Is that really? No.
Yeah, this was spotted on Woodward Avenue in Detroit a couple of days ago.
This is a wrap, though.
I was going to say, what is happening?
Probably, almost certainly. Yeah.
Yeah, this is just
this thing is like bright neon green.
Oh God,
it's awesome.
I'm sure because these things are all custom built, and everybody can order whatever they want on there. There may well be somebody that some rich person that orders one in this. I hope somebody does order one in this color.
Yeah, I want someone to order someone in this color.
Yeah,
I demand a
$250,000 car.
Oh God,
I demand Dayglow neon green. Yeah, and I want to say radical, like splashed in pink along the side. I had a pair of skis like that from the late 80s. I had skis that said radical on the back.
You were so cool, Robbie.
They had all these different colors. They were Yeah,
so this was spotted near Pastiner's Hobbies on Woodward in Detroit, in Birmingham. Pastiner's is one of the more popular cars and coffee locations on Saturday mornings around Detroit. And Steve Pastiner, who runs the place, spotted this one and posted some photos on Instagram a few days ago. And so this is the first time anybody's actually seen one on the road.
Yeah, these are pretty
It's
low.
alive. It's bright and it's alive.
Yeah,
Green machine.
it's very green.
It is.
It's the green
so
machine.
green. That is.
But
not
it's a you know what? It's electric wagon. That's all I care about.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is.
I'm like, yeah, more electric wagons, please.
All right. That's it for the news items, except for SAE J3400. This is, you know what J3400 is, don't you, Robbie?
I do. J3400 is the fancy standard name for NACS, the North American Charging Standard, which is just a fancy name for Tesla's charging port.
Yep. And back in June, SAE announced that they were going to develop a new standard based on the Tesla designed connector, and standard. Because Tesla did a bunch of stuff for their implementation of it, but they wanted to incorporate some other things like official support for bidirectional charging and various other things. And they said that they would have it done by the end of the year. And sure enough, last year they published it. Last week they published it. And I had a chance to chat with Dr. Rodney McGee from University of Delaware. Rodney was the chair of the task force that developed the standard. And we'll have that recording on here afterwards. It gets pretty geeky at some points. He's talking about how a lot of the stuff works, but there's some really interesting stuff in there about what the benefits of this are over the existing J1772 standard, which is the SA standard we've had in all non-Tesla vehicles for the last 12, 13 years.
CCS and
CCS. Basically, aside from the fact that you've got the smaller, easier to use Tesla connector, there's actually a bunch of technical benefits to this as well, because the existing standards only support up to 240 volts, but it turns out that if you take the power that comes through the power lines running around your neighborhood and everything, those are 480 volt 3-phase, and if you take a single phase of that, it's actually 277 volts, not 240 volts. And so to get it down to 240, you actually have to use a transformer to get it down to 240 volts, which adds extra cost. And so
and heat, and you're losing power. Blah,
yeah.
blah, blah.
So the new standard,
a lot of nerdy things.
Yeah, the new standard will actually support up to 277 volts. So you'll be able to have chargers that are less costly because they require less hardware. And this also applies to DC chargers, AC and DC chargers. So you can lower the cost of the infrastructure. You have higher power, higher charging power. So now, because of the 277 volts versus 240, you can have 25% faster charging. And it's going to be more efficient, like 2 to 4% more efficient. So fewer losses because you don't have those transformers. So it should be better all around, and hopefully the software side of all this stuff works, and hopefully Electrify America can get their act together.
Yeah, it's interesting because if you go to Tesla's site, because when they first said this back in June, like Tesla had all the specs and everything on their site you could link to, and then once this came out, once the SAE, the J3400 stuff came out, Tesla now just links to that. They're like, oh, we're not holding it anymore. Now it's Tesla, and now it's SAE. So now it's, I know there's, if you're concerned about, like, Tesla's going to have a monopoly. I'm like, nope, it belongs to everyone now.
Yeah, the only thing Tesla has a monopoly on.
You can build one at your house now.
Yeah, the only thing Tesla has a monopoly on is their superchargers,
which work.
Well, they work.
Which work.
They work with Teslas.
Well, they again, when I took that iX up there and I just plugged it in, I was just like, it just worked. That's it. Yeah. That's all I had to do. All I had to do is add. But the hardest thing I had to do was add a credit card to my Tesla account. And I was like, I just plugged it in. It's all boom. I'm like, it was just sort of disheartening because you kind of want like some sort of like problem to happen, and there wasn't. because we know that you have to do the software handshake between the car and the charger, and there's all these things that like, oh, these are the reasons why things don't work. And then I just go to the Tesla thing with a BMW and I just plug it in and it works.
It works. Yep.
Well, I will.
We'll see what happens when they have thousands of EVs, though.
Yeah. In the conversation I had with Rodney, he references some diagrams that are in a slide deck, which I will attach to the post on the site on wheelbearings.media, and I'll put a link to it in the show notes. So if you want to follow along with what he's saying, you can download those slides and see what he's talking about. But it's an interesting conversation. So hopefully you'll enjoy that. And I think that's all we've got for this week. Anything else you guys have?
I got nothing.
Okay.
Nothing.
All right.
Nothing, honey.
Well, happy holidays, everybody. Happy New Year. Christmas and Hanukkah are behind us, and I think Festivus, and hopefully you got a chance to air all your grievances.
Air all your grievances.
So have a happy
Feats of strength.
Yeah. And we'll talk to you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Nice to meet you.
Hi, nice to meet you as well, Dr. McGee.
Oh, yeah, please. Rodney, it's fine.
All right, thanks, Rodney. And so I was hoping to have a little chat with you to talk about J3400, which was just published, and learn a little bit more, especially for the podcast listeners, about what this actually means in terms of implementing the NACS connector standard for future EVs, non-Tesla EVs.
Yeah. So for non-Tesla EVs, well, there's a lot to talk about. Now we could probably, the best thing we could focus on is automakers who are going to be making native NACS vehicles at some point, next year, the year after, whatever. Everyone has a sort of a different timeline. Some haven't given specific dates, but what is we could probably either start with AC or DC. What kind of in particular?
Well, yeah, I guess maybe first, what has anything in terms of the standard? Has anything changed that's notable from what Tesla has deployed today and what they initially released?
Well, the Tesla specification was kind of very narrow and not necessarily very all-encompassing in terms of, the aspects it covers. So, things like AC charging voltages were not specified in 23.666, which is what Tesla called that specification. And so that was sort of one thing that the standard had to decide. And I don't know if did you read my blog post I did, not blog, but my interview I did with Electrify or whatever they're called?
Yeah, I did see that one. In fact, I've got it open here in another browser tab right now.
So just as background, one of the things that when Tesla first created, actually, I have a nice chart on this. Let me show you real quick. Okay, this I think is a good example. Okay, so your screen, blah blah blah. Okay, so typically, if you have a site in the U.S., let's say it's a parking lot that has a few DC chargers and some AC chargers. It's a CCS-based system. It's a commercial site. This is kind of what you're looking at. There was a lot of talk about, 48277 in the article. One of the reasons that was discussed, as a lot of people may not know, but most DC charging stations, with some exceptions being like some 20, 30 kilowatt DC stations, pretty much anything considered a fast charger is running at 480, 277. So what it means if you have level 2 and DC in the same site is they can't share the same power infrastructure. So now, just so you know, this utility buys this. So you pay electric rates, utility pays, and they furnish this transformer for you. Maybe this is up on a pole. Maybe this is a ground mounted one right here. Depending on the amount of power you're asking for. And so let's just imagine you go to a utility and you want to put in 10 level 2s. Just, you can just do the math on that, right? So let's say they're like 10 kilowatts each. You install 10 of those. You're talking, well, it's just right there. Let's say 100 kVA. There's some kilowatts where if you request it, you're just going to get 480, 277 from the utility if you put in enough charging. And that's just because they only stock transformers a certain size, whether that's 300 or 1,000 kilowatt, whatever that threshold is. At some point, you're going to get 480. You won't even have the choice at 208. So what that means is you have to have intermediate customer and transformer. Guess who pays for this? You do. Guess who pays for this? You do. So all of this costs, and by the way, you lose 2 to 8% going through here. So basically today, you have what a lot of people get, which is 208. You get 240 at home. You can get 240 at commercial locations, but honestly, 95% of the time, it's 208 currently today. And you have transformers here. So when we did Tesla, one of the things that a lot of people don't know is that this is a Generation 2 wall box. So Generation 2 wall box is UL listed and can operate up to 80 amps, but it also goes to 277 volts. So you got your 208 covered, your 240 covered, your 277. And what that means is from the very earliest days of NACS, Tesla could install AC stations off the same supply as a DC station. So it looks like this. Your 3 phases go out to your next DC VSC, and your AC chargers just pull off a single phase. Oh. So now you've eliminated a whole, and just the way the math works, these are your 4 most common. Why does this stuff matter? Okay. Why? Because we're talking about mass electrification, right? We've already upper middle class people don't have problems charging. Where do they charge for most of their driving? They charge at home, in their garage. They're solved. We know how to install charging infrastructure there. 240, 60 amps, 48 amps, continuous charging, whatever. You're good to go for anything you could need for your home charging, right? But what about the 60%? It's like something like, half the U.S. economy is involved with transportation of goods, right? So how do we electrify the rest of the system? City dwellers, medium and heavy duty, all the Amazon trucks, everything. Well, the way to do that is to support all of these voltages here with NACS can be supported for AC charging. So you can 277 volt charge right here. So you can pull a phase here, and you could have 3 different vehicles charging. C to neutral, A to neutral, B to neutral. They all get 277. Your DC charger runs on the 480. You get your 208. Okay, you can still charge off 208 single phase. You get your 240. This is the only kind of commercial 240 you get. This is kind of a legacy installation, so you get 240 here. And this is what we have at our homes. This is what everyone's used to. So people had this understanding of, well, basically, for the most part, these top 2 are the only ones you can do with CCS. You could do this one too, but again, this is for legacy installation. So we were just talking about these top 2 here. NACS essentially opens the door to this bottom one for AC charging. And the reason why that's important is the lighting in this room, this 277 volts, the HVAC in this building, this commercial building is 480 volts, 3-phase. And so a lot of people don't realize that, but there's a humming transformer room right over there. And that little transformer here is sized for the building. Okay. So when they design the building, they say, how many outlets are we going to need in there? Do we need some 208 for the kitchen, for the little electric cooktop, and for an apartment building? And that's what they size it out. All the extra capacity is back here at the utility transformer. And it's sitting at this higher voltage. So a lot of people don't even realize, they think, oh, my building only has 208. Yes, that's because that's what you get for your domestic sockets, for your, little plugs. But what's actually going back here on the heavy side, certainly anywhere you'd put a DC station, you got this. So the big difference was the Tesla vehicles supported 277, and they have. It was a kind of a relatively big decision point, was which automakers were going to line up behind keeping that, retaining that. Tesla themselves started to walk away from that because they thought they were going to lose the connector war. They thought they were going to have to become a subset of what J1772 was. That's why products like the AC Magic Dock and the DC Magic Dock, those were in development like over a year ago, right? Because they're out. So that's time period those products were started a year or two ago. They were looking at the NEVI rules. We're going to be forced to install that kind of infrastructure. Maybe and eventually European style, we're going to be required to have CCS inlets, but that's probably not going to be for a while. But they were looking at that on the horizon and planning. And so they internally de-emphasized that, not because it wasn't good engineering,
right?
But the reality.
But to get compatibility with the rest of the CCS vehicles,
right?
Yeah.
Even though they were a minority of market share, right? That was the contradiction of NEVI, right? Is you have a company with 66, 70% EV market share, right? And the only standard was used by the majority of the other OEMs, but a majority of North American market share, right?
Okay.
And so that was one reason why once, Ford flipped the next, sort of everyone did, because they're joining the majority, really, of the infrastructure. Not with the one exception of level 2 AC chargers. There's more level 2 AC chargers than there are destination chargers, but in terms of DC fast chargers, there's more Tesla than anything else, just by the numbers.
So I guess what this would mean for consumers is that they will potentially have the ability, assuming that automakers integrate 277 volt capability into their vehicles when they go to the NACS connector, that they should be able to get faster AC charging is one benefit.
Faster, cheaper. I mean, it will be a little bit faster. I mean, yeah, there are certain advantages, right? So, you're getting 25% power for the same ampacity, right? You're getting an efficiency improvement just because of the loss of the wires. The efficiency one I wouldn't undercount, 2 to 4% forever is a lot of efficiency. That
adds up to a lot of watts.
The Department of Energy loses their shit, to get a 1% efficiency increase. That's like a huge win if they can increase something by 1%, right? That'll have an effect if we electrify vehicles. Imagine increasing the efficiency of charging by 2 to 4%.
Yeah.
I mean, that in and of itself pays for the next switchover. And you can see that's the thing. The 277 was it's only a North American voltage. Mm-hmm. It doesn't exist anywhere else in the world. So, there was a Japanese automaker and there was a German automaker who weren't in favor of keeping 277. The rest of, you had support from big companies like ChargePoint, you had support from Ford and GM and, Honda and a bunch of other companies who I think, especially those who have energy units, they, instead of just the way we designed standards, 10, 12 years ago, it was okay to save $1 on the car if it costs $1,000 more off the car, right? Because whose money is it? Oh, I don't care if it costs $1,000 or $2,000 or $3,000 more out there. Mm-hmm. If I save $1 here, that's better. But they don't look at it that way. You have GM Energy in it. You have Ford Pro Business. You have, Honda is launching their initiatives. That they can't look at it like that anymore. This is the reason why Ford had 277, this is the reason why Tesla had 277 to begin with, is because they were designing for both sides. So when you design for both sides, you get a different solution. And it was appearing, prior to the next switchover that we were going to, Teslas would still have 277 support because these stations exist. That was another sort of reason, right? Is this the typical NAC station? No, but there are numbers, like, I don't actually know the specifics, but there are thousands of them out there, right? If you buy a NACS inlet vehicle and you plug into a destination charger, it should work, right? So partially support for 277 was to say, yes, Tesla's de-emphasized it, but these stations are out there. So if you're going to build a NACS car, your vehicle could see that voltage, you should design for it, right? And then that's sort of the push to do it. But then when you look at all the advantages, well, then it's just paying dividends after you swallow that. And is it a big deal? Not really. The IEC standards on creepage and clearance when you're designing the circuit boards and X and Y caps. Your big Siemens, companies like Siemens and Eaton and those kind of companies that design stuff for global market, they already like with these power supplies that go inside these lights and things, they already designed for 277 because for a lot of industrial, because they don't want to design different products for North America. So generally anything less than 300 volts gets categorized in the requirements very similarly, anything between 240 and 300. So it's kind of like in the standards, they'll be like, if it's higher than 200 but less than 300, design it like this. And so what that means is a lot of the spacings and a lot of the components are already 277 ready. They just need to go through and make sure. Because what typically happens is the car is just going to check the voltage, say it's too high, and maybe say, oh, I'm not compatible. But if they want to build a NACS version of this onboard charger, then they need to basically, have a more extended range that they test for and an extended range that the software accepts. But not all OEMs will even need to make significant hardware changes. Because keep in mind, this is the other big thing. NACS uses AC and DC pins they use AC and DC on the same pins. What's the new DC charging voltages up to? 1,000 volts. So you already designed these pins for 1,000 volts DC. So yes, you have to maybe make sure your onboard charger is ready to take 277, but all the wiring, the sockets, the relays, all the safety things, all of that has to be rated for 1,000 volts DC. So when they looked at the big picture, they were like, oh, 277s, 95% of the OEMs looked at it and said, wow, we're going to get all these advantages for North America. It's not really going to cost us anything. It could half the cost of a AC charger. Of course, we should do this. But that took a lot of discussions in the meetings to kind of get to that point. I would say earlier in the process, it was more 50-50. And by the time the votes came about, it was more 90-10 in terms of the split on supporting it. So that's the other big difference.
So you get improved efficiency, lower infrastructure cost, and potentially higher charging power if everything's set up on the vehicle side. So sounds like a no-brainer.
It is and then that's the reason why most people kind of like fell in line for that. Now, you might have caught this or might have not, but it's sort of mentioned in the article. Shift. Okay. So you saw this picture in the article, I'm assuming.
Yes.
Okay. So 277 is important for another reason. This picture. You have 277. 277 is a single phase of a three-phase 480 system. Why? Well, so now what you can do is have infrastructure like this that may or may not be connected to three-phase. So on this connector, for example, it's only going to pick up two of the wires, right? So NACS only has two powers. So you're going to pick up line and neutral. All right, going back to this. So we're picking up line and neutral. But what is if it's a heavy-duty vehicle and it has all five of these pins? Now it can get up to 52 kilowatts. Now, the reason why that's important is there are school bus projects right now doing AC charging. They're maxing out J1772 at 19 kilowatts. They hit that. They're right up on that limit. And those tiny little 3.2 millimeter pins on J70 and 72, while they can do 80 amps, and there are listed 80 amp products out there, it's touchy. 80 amps is right at the absolute maximum limit for those 3.2 millimeter pins. So they don't last very long. So a lot of these school bus projects, they're getting less than a year out of their cables just because it's thermally stressing for the cables. They're relatively large battery packs on these school buses. They need to charge. So they don't necessarily need DC charging. They just need higher than 20, 30, 40. Anywhere in those sort of numbers they get above that, they're good. So the way the math sort of works is if it's three-phase, you now have interoperability. So the way it works in Europe is not all cars can three-phase charge. But if the phases are there, then it can take advantage of them. So what that means is that before this change, if you wanted to think about using the three-phase connector for a medium and heavy-duty application, these kind of vehicles that are coming, your F-650s, your sort of big trucks, right? You had to choose, do I want J1772 or something else because of the fixed cords? But now, if the infrastructure is just a socket outlet, like it's used everywhere else in the world, then you don't have to choose AC connectors anymore. You can just have infrastructure that allows the vehicle to support what it can. And if it's NACS compliant, it can charge on any of the voltages that could possibly.
So you could plug into a three-phase outlet and plug a NACS connector into the vehicle, and it'll all work.
Yep, 20. Yep. Yeah. So the idea is, think of a school bus lot where they have a mixed fleet. They have a lot of trucks and buses, but a few car vehicles. They can use the same infrastructure to charge both kinds of vehicles. And again, it's really, electrification is about being able to take the power that comes from the utility, get it into a panel, and get it out to a charger as cheap as possible. As the more stuff you add in here, the more electrification costs, right? And if you have to go to DC charging just to get 30 kilowatts or something like that, which is what you have to do without three-phase, that's a big setback for medium heavy duty. That means you're talking about a station that costs a few $1,000s to a station that costs more than $10,000. So it's just a complete, and they don't necessarily need that. They just need something that can charge a little bit better. It's basically the same reason you use AC, just a use case scaled up for a bigger pack, right? So if in the passenger car world, we know that we can cover a lot of AC use cases with that, 7 to sort of 20 kilowatt charging. We know we can pretty much do everything we need, but that's for our energy usage based on the kind of loads we do. Well, those trucks and buses, they have 3 or 4 times bigger battery packs. You just scale up, and three-phase does that. So it's trucks and buses are about 10 years behind everything else. Like, we've seen a lot of projects with, delivery companies and doing stuff. We haven't really scratched the surface of electrifying transportation yet. So these solutions are setting us up for how do we have mass electrification across the usage duty from passenger cars all the way through heavy. So this solution is really AC charging finished up, basically, for the 21st century, because this is basically taking the AC that we have on the grid today and how do we get that into cars. Just keep in mind, we have a transformer shortage. There are buildings being held up right now that can't go live because they're back ordered waiting for these guys.
Right.
And these, if you keep the NEVI rules the way they're listed now and requiring level 2 forever kind of rules, then you basically say, then you have to take this path for all AC charging. DC charging, I think, well, let me ask you if you have any questions. That's the sum of the AC. It's all of these pieces together. You have to take the street charging component with the 277, with the three-phase, and you have this whole buffet from people charging along, a street in Philadelphia, street parking, all the way through how do we electrify delivery trucks, at a large facility where the whole parking lot has chargers. and you want them like this, not with cords hanging around that and drivers are driving over and crushing. You go out to actual lots, they put the school buses right next to each other, really close. The driver's taking the infrastructure away so they can plow it, they can clean it, they can work with it. Just sets everything up for low maintenance, maintainable infrastructure to electrify.
Right. And as we said, especially for that street charging, what you don't want is curbside chargers that have cords hanging off. Ideally, a solution like this where, the driver keeps the cord in their car. When they get to a location, they just plug in, and all the pedestals or the lamp posts or whatever it might be have the same connector on there. And then they've got their cord has the right connector for that vehicle.
That's right. And then you never have to do this, you never have to worry about, that again. And it's not some kooky thing the U.S. is coming up with. This is what China, India, Europe, this is what they all use. So, of course, this is like the right solution. It's what the rest of the world. It was only the United States. Here's kind of a point to make. The United States was the only country in the world that had to do anything this effing stupid to AC charge. Every other country could charge with their three-phase voltage. From the Japanese 200-volt systems through your Chinese 220-volt systems, that's 380, 220, from the European 400, 230. Like everyone could take whatever you put into a DC charger, you could put into a car. We were the only country that couldn't do that. We were at a disadvantage.
Yeah.
We were at a disadvantage with electrification. We had a more complicated infrastructure than anyone else for AC charging. And a lot of people never got the feedback, right? Because when you go to electrical engineer, you say, design me a parking lot with 25 level 2s. Well, what's level 2 need? Oh, it goes 208 to 240. The guy just draws the plan out because that's what it requires. He doesn't go back and say, hey, can't these things do 277? That would save us a lot of money. That's not how the loop works.
Yeah.
Requirements flow down, So a lot of people never got to hear, electrical engineer doesn't come back and say, hey, you should tell these SAE guys that if they made this change, it would save us like half the money for this project. No, they're not going to say that. They just design it for what it's spec to. And if the specs are level 2, this is what you're going to end up with. And that's another thing to mention. Unanimous among the 150 people in the group that we completely abandoned the level terminology.
Oh, okay.
Level 1, level 2. Level 3 never was a thing anyway, but the industry just used it because I don't know why. But it was just kind of a colloquial term people used. Technically, like CCS, DC fast charging, was actually DC level 2, but nobody called it that. That's actually what the standard called it. So in terms of a standard stuff, that level terminology failed. You could have a level 2 charger that was just 240, 20 amps, or 240, 15 amps. It was in theory, you could have a level 1 that was higher than a level 2. If you put in a level 1 at 40 amps and you put in a level 2 at 15, you could have a level 1 that was higher than it was just dumb. The terminology, it didn't communicate anything to drivers. Like EV drivers who have had an EV for more than a year, they're like kilowatts. I want to know how many kilowatts I can charge at because I know how big of a battery I have. So kilowatts is the answer. So it was unanimous for people to say, let's talk about charging kilowatts. And then the only thing complicated for DC, of course, was if it's a 1,000-volt charger and you're a 500-volt car, you're going to charge it half the speed of that DC charger can do, right? Because your voltage is half. So if it says it's a 500 kilowatt DC charger, then you're charging at 250 at most because your battery pack's lower voltage. But other than that, in terms of terminology, with DC charging, it's kind of exactly what you expect. I mean, the J3400 is 1,000 volts is sort of the recommended sort of normal versus like typical max charging state. DC charging stations today are obviously they're 500 volts. The 1,000 volt Tesla stations are just now being deployed.
Yeah, I think that's their version 4 superchargers
Right.
are 1,000 volts. Yeah.
And so with third-party NACS DC chargers, I think they're all going to be 1,000 volts just because they're going to start there. Because why would you come? I mean, I'm sure there'll be some products, but I think a lot of your first NACS certified DC VSEs are going to be 1,000 volt because that's what we're installing with CCS right now. New stuff, a lot of it is 1,000 volts. So Electrify America, that kind of stuff. So that's what you're going to see, people taking their 1,000 volt CCS stations and then putting the 1,000 volts NACS connector on there, which is slightly different. I mean, if you look at it, than the NACS connector. They mate together, of course, but the J3400 connector is technically like what's on the version 4 superchargers, and that does physically, it does look different. It has different baffling on the inside to handle the higher voltages and things like that.
I remember back in the way back when J1772, like 2008, 9, when that standard was being developed, one of the things that was mentioned at the time was that the connector was designed for like 10,000 insertion cycles. Is that still the case with 3400, or is that?
That's a UL requirement.
Okay.
So just to get your UL certification, they're going to test you 10,000. Whether it holds up in the real world or not, that's depends. Somebody puts dirt in there. But the UL standard requires 10,000.
Okay.
So it might have been something that, back then they had to put in the standard or had to put in a SA standard, but that's part of the UL process, honestly.
Okay.
And the IEC requires, which just, international standards require 5,000 for AC and 10,000 for DC. And because NACS is a AC plus DC guy, then 10,000 seemed reasonable to settle at, since that was the North American requirement anyway.
Okay.
Oh,
go ahead.
There is one thing I wanted to mention, and basically, I think it's an important for sort of many policy people and kind of what they're thinking about is right now, again, I've mentioned this a few times, but if the NEVI rules continue to call out, level 2 AC, then we don't get to take advantage of any of that kind of stuff I showed you about. Mm-hmm. And so I mentioned in that Electrotech article that one compromise being discussed is basically saying, okay, well, you have to have, J1772 for DC fast chargers to get NEVI funding, but maybe we open things up on the AC side, because AC charging, where we're lacking, is in that sort of apartment It's really for new EV drivers. It's really for people who don't. I don't know about you, but I know people firsthand. Like I know a colleague of mine who lives in Philly, Street Parks. She got an EV, couldn't find places to park. She got rid of it.
Yeah,
because she street parks. And so those are the drivers that we're really missing out on today. Those who need the utility just to be able to pull the 277 down. They need the street charging. They don't need that permanently installed J1772 cord, because that's going to mean that installation is more expensive to put in, more expensive to maintain, and that means it's going to cost more money, which means it's not going to go in lower income areas. This is like all of these cascading effects that what they are worried about is, leaving EVs behind. But if you think about it, people who have J1772 cars today, they know where they charge their cars. The only time they get in trouble is their long trips, right? And that's where the DC part comes in. So having a long period of transition times on that. But when they come home, they're going to come home, if they're an existing EV driver, they've figured out their AC charging equation, like 95% of other Americans. They have their place where they AC charge. And so I think they're two different use cases. So having the same kind of rules for AC and DC apply, and there's going to have to be some lobbying to flip that. One of the things, the optics everyone's really worried about is no one wants to cross streams politically, right? So if you're too friendly with it, if you're seeming like you're being unfairly friendly to the NAC standard, are you going to get, pushback for being like a Tesla sycophant, right? And that is unfortunately kind of a political reality, right? And so even though the technicals are pretty clear, but that's not something those, keeping 277, the street charging options, all of that stuff, Tesla supported, but it wasn't their idea. It was a collective of all the other OEMs who were coming into that system. And so it shouldn't be looked at, certainly on the AC side, as doing Tesla's bidding, right?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like pretty much almost all of the industry is behind this because there's definite technical and cost benefits to it, and given the affordability challenges around and the costs around the shift to electrification, if we can take cost out of both the infrastructure side and the vehicle side, that's regardless of who originally developed it. Doesn't matter who developed it. It's going to be a benefit to everyone.
Right. And that's the thing that I'm struggling to get across. The government is a little bit leaning towards this no EV left behind thing. And I think we can do that with DC, but I think it's more about the politics of it and actually just not wanting to feel like it's such a big shift, right? It's such a big shift than where we were a year ago when the NEVI rule finally came out. It's such a big shift that it's hard for a lot of people. But as I've pointed out to the regulators, we have, I don't think I'm being hyperbolic here, a once in a generation opportunity to make a change here because of the connector switch.
Right.
If we didn't have the connector switch, none of this would be on the table. None of it.
So
none of it would be on the table.
And we're still so early on. I mean, barely more than 1% of the vehicle fleet is electric today.
Yeah.
Even if some vehicles are quote unquote left behind, it's going to be a tiny percentage of the total vehicle fleet, in a few years.
Right. And that's why I hope that independent voices like, you guys that aren't tied in with so the voices kind of against it, right, are people who don't really care about electrification, right? People, OEMs are openly hostile to EVs, Toyota. People who have existing products that maybe aren't these products that want to move it this year. But does that really mean with the kind of acquisition guidelines changes, like the requirements go in years before the stuff goes in the ground. So right. You got to be able to clear out this inventory. Nobody just wants their, level 2 EVSE with the permanently attached cord J1772 to look like a dinosaur. But that's where we are.
Yeah.
It is, as of today, it is officially yesterday's cord. And the quicker we move on from that, while having a support path, like I said, for the DC charging and not like letting people who invest in EVs getting left out, they're going to they have their charger at home. They're going to have their place to charge along the interstate and all that kind of stuff. Important, no disagreement there. But for these people who just don't have EVs now, we need to have regulations that allow it to be lower cost, because that's one of my biggest criticisms of a lot of this green tech is it's not as accessible to people across different income classes. It's just not. Mm-hmm. And a lot of it is related to these kind of decisions. When we started electrification, like you mentioned, 2008 area, we were like, how do we sell, relatively expensive cars to upper middle class buyers?
Yeah.
Right. But if we're going to have electrification, everyone has to be able to share in that. And it has to be equitable to be accessible. And that's what we're really trying to set up with a lot of these standards, is really to kind of push on that. And luckily we have the support from the automakers who, because they're working both sides now, a lot of them, could see the light in it. It just happened to be that what the companies wanted and what was good for electrification were aligned. That wasn't the case 10 years ago. I don't want to be too much of an AC versus DC guy. DC has its place. It's great for en-route charging. But in terms of having the most number of vehicles charging for the cheapest amount of money and connected to be able to opportunistically charge, there's nothing like AC.
Yeah.
After are plugged in, ready to receive a charging schedule based on the driver's needs that gives them the best value charge and maybe opportunities for things like VUG in the future. AC can only really offer that because of the cost. Fundamentally, DC is like a filling station. You get in, you fill up, you leave. For people who say DC chargers are just going to get cheaper and cheaper,
Nope.
it's true. They will get cheaper, but the onboard charger will get cheaper also. They're the same stuff.
Yeah.
So whatever's going on the DC side.
And the electricity is not necessarily going to get any cheaper, though.
No.
Yeah.
Which is why you got to be able to charge opportunistically.
Yeah.
Which is why you got to have low infrastructure costs. So and then people want their electric cars to do stuff. So they want to go camping and they want to have things like vehicle to load. All of that keeps the bidirectional onboard charger on the car. So more and more people are adding AC bidirectionality, whether it's on grid or off grid or whatever that is. That's all coming into the mix because
And that's supported in 3400, right?
that's supported in 3400, right? So we have multiple ways to do that, and that's on AC. So yeah, there'll be use cases for DC V to X kind of stuff. Certainly, Chatham's had that for more than 10 years now, but that's not the kind of thing that will be widely deployed in North America for backup situations. So, that's why for outside of that in-route charging, I'm a big believer in AC. And that's why we really focused in on mass electrification, having good, solid options for AC charging. And that's really what's different than the NAC standard. The NAC spec published by Tesla didn't really get into any of that. Not that it disallowed it.
It just didn't address it at all.
It didn't address it. Yeah. So that's really where the SAE standard is different, primarily on the AC side. There are some minor technical differences. Like one of the things that's an option in NACS is having a button on the cord, not that makes a latch, not like J1772, the button to stop charging. How does that work on AC and DC charging? It's a little different. It's not required that you have a stop button, but it's an option for both AC and DC. And so one of the things you'll notice about CCS today is if your connector's locked, you have to go touch on the screen to get the stop. Maybe you have a stop button in your car, maybe not. But once the connector's latched, you can't push the thing down. So a lot of NACS things are going to have a kind of a push to make a disconnect request on the connector. Now, I'm assuming the way that's going to work is if you have your vehicle locked and someone just walks by and pushes the button, it is going to ramp down. But then if you never unlock, it probably just then keeps charging after like a minute or two. I don't know exactly how that implementation will work. So in case people just go by and push your button or something. Or maybe you have to have your doors unlocked and then you press the button, or I don't know. But essentially, there's still minor details like that kind of stuff that I think you're going to see some NACS AC products coming out without a push to stop button, and some will have it. And so there'll be some differences there. Tesla stations are going to all have them in both cases, I think. But again, that's kind of where we are. There's a lot of discussions in the standard about, whether we're going to have more revisions of the standard with regards to safety for AC DC pin sharing, performance requirements, connector testing, just that nothing really changing fundamentally what it is in the future revisions of the standard, but really just getting it to be more, just more standards stuff. Basically having things be more compliant and more performance requirements and safer and things like that.
Yeah. One other thing I wanted to ask you about was the communication side of this, because obviously chargers and vehicles have to talk to each other. And I know that in 1772 and CCS, there's in the standards, there's communication protocols. How has that been incorporated into 3400?
There's a lot. There's no one requirement for communications. It's pretty open. You might say, why? Well, there's a lot of things that aren't finished and worked out about communications. Like, we don't have plug and charge in North America, and it's not because we don't have technical standards. It's because we don't have business arrangements that allow them, and we don't have ways to authenticate drivers across the whole spectrum, right? Like, how does ChargePoint know you're a Ford customer? How does, GM know you're a Tesla customer, right? So those kind of issues have to be solved to make things like plug and charge work. And that's outside of my task force. That's ongoing within the SAE ITC group. And I think there are going to be some announcements on that next year. I think you've had a number of OEMs make movements there. And you'll see those press releases on that topic next year, and that should move that along. But in terms of communication, pretty much anything that's a standard that's published on communication that's compatible with CCS and NACS systems is allowed. So there are vehicle to load communication things in there. There's, some 15.11.8 stuff in there. There's other communication protocols. We're not in a position to be picking favorites at this point. Because I don't think anything has established itself as a recommended practice that kind of works. Everyone kind of knows that things need to be interoperable, and they want that kind of experience. There are a couple of minor differences in 3400 that should make it a little more reliable. Especially for smart AC charging, like any kind of smart communication around AC charging. There's some additional things that are allowed in 3400 that are different than sort of the way we've been doing them, and that's to make them more reliable. But on the communication side, basically anything that's like published and out there, pre-existing, is allowed.
Okay.
Like your 15.11.8 stuff, and there's other, SEP2s in there. The LIN CP. There are other communication standards that are. I know a lot of OEMs are doing vehicle to X stuff, and I got 6 companies doing 3 different things.
Yeah.
So that I can think of. So there's not one thing that they're all doing on that front.
Okay.
So I think a lot of people would like to say, "Oh, if you just call out 15.11.8, everything's done and finished." No, it's just
no, not that simple.
They don't. AC plug and charge doesn't even really see deployment usage in Europe. So in there, the government just has flat out mandated it for years. So that's not. It's not from a want of. It's not from a want of trying that we're not, seeing progress there. It's because the communication. Just calling out a standard it's not like magic sprinkle dust you can put on top of things and have it work. Like new standards like 15.11.8-20 that were published, a lot of people talk about. -20 doesn't even have the interoperability test published for it yet, -21. So there's like a lot of things. They had the first testable involving it in November. How could we be putting it as requirements and documents? Right? They haven't even begun. So as your char-in industry cheerleader, typical nonsense people will, talk up all that stuff. But at the end of the day, people are just trying to achieve basic functions that are reliable rather than going for pie for the sky stuff.
All right. Well, I really appreciate all the time you've given me. This has been great explainer on all this.